Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Austin from Commander 99. We're going to be talking about some of the cards that we like most from Modern Horizons for Commander. Austin, why don't you tell us about your channel a little bit?
Yes, so this is Austin, and Commander 99 is a Commander gameplay deck tech channel. We kind of compass a lot of different content. Currently, we're doing a lot of Magic Online gameplay, multiplayer, as well as we have like a podcast that's ongoing and deck techs, occasional deck techs when a new legend is released, similar to this set like Modern Horizons.
Very cool. So we all know me and my play style. I love creatures. I love turning them sideways. How would you describe your play style?
Ooh, well, with my play style, I am more for tribal creatures specifically. I'm very big on chaining things together. So cost reduction with card draw, where creatures come into play, and then you play another creature because you drew another creature, and you continue that until you have a bunch of creatures. And then I spend a lot of time like protecting said creatures.
Nice. Sweet, man.
Yeah,
Cool. Are you ready to dive into some cards?
let's talk Modern Horizons.
Yeah, man, let's do it. All right, so first up, we have Ranger Captain of Eos. We got one white for a 3/3. Enters the battlefield. You may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Then there's the part that I really like. Sacrifice it. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. What are your thoughts?
See, I really like the first part. You know, search for a creature with CMC 1. You know, it's very similar to Captain of Eos, or is it Ranger of
Ranger of
Eos?
Eos. Ranger of
Ranger of
Eos.
Eos. They're
Yep.
they're very similarly named. So Ranger of Eos, because searching for a creature with CMC 1 or less is it's value. You know, it's going to add something new to your hand. It's something you don't see very often in white. So I'm excited about that part.
Yeah, it is a very cool ability. That second ability, where I'm excited about it, is in like the more competitive stuff. I've been starting to play with the stronger group, and you really need the ability to shut down your opponents, at least temporarily, so they can't just like blow you out or, Cyclonic Rift or whatever the case is. And that second ability has me really excited. The first ability is cool, though. Things like Sarah Ascendant, Mother of Runes, Weathered Wayfarer, all really good picks in mono white. And then as you expand colors, you get some other really cool stuff too. I saw someone talking about like Viscera Seer and doing like a Carador type of deck. Could be really, really strong.
That kind of brings me to the idea of Giver of Runes, the new card from Modern Horizons. We could talk about that one, where another target creature you control can tap to gain protection from colorless or from any color of your choice this turn.
I can't believe they
And
printed that card for Modern.
yeah,
I can't believe that's a thing that happened.
it's a second Mother of Runes for
Yeah. This
for
thing's
us
going to be
Commander
insane.
players. Yeah.
Yeah, so Giver of Runes, one white for 1/2. Another target creature you control gains protection from colorless or the color of your choice until end of turn. Essentially a Mother of Runes that also hits colorless.
Yeah.
Stupidly good.
I think it's important to note that it is another target creature. So unlike Mother of Runes, it can only target another creature. But if you happen to draw both, they can protect one another,
That
which
is a
is
great
nice.
point. I did actually miss that initially. And that is one of the things that makes Mother of Runes so crazy is that it does protect itself.
Yeah. And that just means you can get in for a nice attack too, which is always good.
Yeah. Moving on. Have you seen Winds of Abandon yet?
Yes, yes. So Winds of Abandonment, it's colorless and a white. Exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card, puts that on the battlefield tapped, and shuffles. Now, the overload cost, 6 mana, it's a board wipe. I mean, you change the instance of target to each. And so you exile all creatures, and give everyone basic lands instead.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this thing?
So for this one, I like the idea of something like this where the versatility, like that above all else, being able to either use it as a board wipe or a single target removal is going to be very helpful for a format like Commander. I also think it punishes greedy land bases. Anything past 4 or 5 colors, it's going to see a lot of value because maybe an opponent can't grab all those lands.
Yeah, that's a good point. At some point, certain decks do run out of basics. Even like my 2-color decks, I've been averaging about 13 to 15 basics in them. And if you have like a Sword of the Animist, something like that, it is possible to pull them all out. And I have run out of basics before.
Yeah, so it's just a mass exile with no downside if you happen to pull all your basics.
It has absolutely no downside if you play an Aven Mind Sensor with it, which you should.
Yeah, I mean you're playing white, so
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this card a lot, and there can be a drawback. Like there are certain times where giving your opponents a lot of lands may be trouble. I'm thinking like green decks, green red decks, especially if they still have cards in hand. I could see that overload being an issue if you're not planning to take them out of the game right then.
yeah, I can see that.
But the upside is that there's going to be times where you have a lot of stuff out and you just overload this thing and you kill one or two or everyone at the table.
Yeah, yeah,
Like their blockers are just gone. You have a huge team and that's it. So I think it's going to be a really powerful card. And as you mentioned, it is versatile. So if someone just lays down like a turn 3, turn 4 consecrated Sphinx that you really need to get rid of, then you're going to use the 2-mana mode for sure.
yeah. Speaking of versatility, generous gift.
Oh yeah, the pretty much the ultimate in versatility. 2 and a white, instant, destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Yeah,
So it's Beast Within.
it's white beast within with
It's
an
a white
elephant.
Beast Within, right?
It's a white beast within. It's basically Operation Dumbo Drop the Card. That is an
Okay.
obscure movie reference from I don't know when.
I get you.
But we're dropping an elephant on whatever permanent we don't like.
Yeah, and that includes lands, which I think is what makes this type of card so powerful. Is that it's you don't have a much single target land destruction that deals with some of these problematic sources that you see from opponents. Versatility is the name of commander. It's
Right.
how it works. You want to be able to have all the spells in your deck combat multiple different play styles, and I think Generous Gift is going to do just that.
It really is. So like as a Sunforger player, I love this thing.
Yeah.
When I think about my Sunforger package, one of the weaknesses is something like a Gaia's Cradle. As far as I'm aware, right now, I only have one card that can deal with a Gaia's Cradle, and that's Chaos Warp. This gives a second option, so now you have a reasonable chance of having one of those in hand, not having to go through the whole Sunforger bit to get rid of a Gaia's Cradle when you need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But obviously, any number of other things, like any permanent, there is always a permanent worth blowing up in the game of Commander.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to see something like this. Like, I like the idea of color shifting. I think we need to see this more in Commander.
I
where
agree.
it doesn't need to be like obviously something that's very big. Because obviously colors are really good at doing particular things, and I think that what makes the game so interesting.
I'm still waiting on the white concentrate. I think I'm going to be waiting for a long time based on what Mark Rosewater said about it, but just give me white concentrate or white harmonized.
So you want to talk about this next card?
Yeah, this one's interesting. Sarah the Benevolent, 2 white for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. It's +2 creatures you control with flying get +1/+1 until end of turn. The -3 create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying and vigilance, and -6 you get an emblem with, if you control a creature, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 will reduce it to 1 instead. Essentially, worship on an emblem.
Yeah, that's definitely a way to look at it. For me, I'm always down for planeswalkers that really focus on creating a body. So 4/4 Angel, I'm already seeing an upside for this for Commander for planeswalker decks.
Yeah, and the big thing too, it's subtle, but that angel does have vigilance. So you can be poking your opponents and still protecting your planeswalkers, which is a really big thing.
Exactly, and we're in the highlight of planeswalkers. War of the Spark just came out, so we need more.
Yeah, more planeswalkers. Keep them coming. I don't even know the ones from More of the Spark yet. I've seen them a handful of times, and we got more incoming.
Yeah, I found that the static abilities in particular, like you see those come out of nowhere, and you're like, oh wait, I can't draw cards. Oh wait, I can't make you sacrifice permanents.
Yeah, they can get rough.
Yeah.
They are something. They did a nice job with those. The +2 on this one does feel a bit underwhelming to me. You do need to have flying creatures out to really get much value out of it. But
Yeah.
the fact that it comes in for 4 mana and goes straight up to 6 loyalty is that's pretty good in my opinion. Because you can actually ultimate it the second turn it's in play, And we saw that with the one Nissa. You basically play it, protect it for one turn, and then you're on the ultimate. Seems really, really good.
Yeah, you see that. You see that with a few of them. It's good.
So next up on the list is Astral Drift, 2 and a white, enchantment. Whenever you cycle Astral Drift or cycle another card while Astral Drift is on the battlefield, you may exile target creature. If you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Have you ever played against an Astral Slide deck?
I have, in fact. Yeah, one of my friends at our local game store plays Astral Slide.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and you just get that out, and they go for Rhystic Study. Just grabbing their best enchantments, and now they've got a new toy. Something to add to the deck.
Yeah. I faced Astral Slide a bunch, like way back in the day, and it was miserable. Like, it is such a miserable deck to face because you can't get rid of anything because they just blink it in response to anything that happens.
Yep.
Like,
That's all
once it's there, it's there. Crows and Grip is probably your only real answer.
Yeah, and who plays Crows and Grip? I mean,
Yeah, no one plays Crows and Grip. And also of note, this card does have cycling itself, so if for some reason you don't need it, you can always cycle it.
I mean, yeah, that is noteworthy. I also think like a lot of people that will be playing it will want it,
Yeah. So the way I could see that mattering is if like they play Astral Drift, then they copy Astral Drift and then blink the original, like blink or bounce the original,
yes.
and then the original is in hand and maybe they no longer need it. I don't know, some wackiness. The Astral Slide, Astral Drift players will figure it out, but
Grave recursion with your enchantments, just throw that one in the bin.
Yep,
I could definitely see it.
Throw it in there, pull it out. Cool. So that'll finish up the white section, it looks like. You ready to move on to red?
I got a card here. Fist of Flame. Fist of Flame is a single red and a colorless for an instant. Draw a card. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn. This card in particular, we recently had a legend from War of the Spark, and I think I know you know what I'm talking about. Feather.
Feather the Redeemed.
The Redeemed, yes. This one works particularly well with Feather because a lot of the instants in the deck draw you cards that you can refill your hand and give it a bunch of power. And we need more cards that say draw a card in red and white.
Yeah, that we do. I have mixed feelings about this one in Feather because in a single turn, you actually don't draw that many cards with Feather. Like, you're kind of spacing it out across a bunch of turns typically.
Yeah.
But it's still repeatable, which does make it good. But I think it's about managing expectation. So Feather doesn't really like wheels, and the first place that I immediately go with this is Wheel of Fortune into this thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And get 7, 8 power, whatever the number is, and then start turning things sideways. But like I said, Feather doesn't really like wheels that much. You want to keep the cards in your hand. You don't want to be cycling them away. I've seen a lot of people talk about this for like Nekisar decks, and it seems insane with that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, 2 mana for a redraw in any deck is just good, and when you're allowed to add 8, 9 power to something, or even if you're able to get a full grip past 20 cards, that's commander damage.
Right. Actually, you want to know this would be crazy? Any deck with Rishkar's expertise.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it'll be all right in Feather, but I think it has better applications in other decks, especially wheel decks, especially big draw kind of decks. Potentially some blue and red stuff we might see with that. But yeah, anything that can draw a lot you can make any creature lethal, basically.
Yeah.
Cool. Next up is Aria of Flame. It's 2 and a red for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent gains 10 life. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a verse counter on Aria of Flame. Then it deals damage equal to the number of verse counters on it to target player or planeswalker. Interesting card.
Yeah. Each opponent gaining 10 life. So
it's 30 life.
Yeah, 30
life. A lot of life. Yeah.
I can see it being played in Storm. That's the obvious place.
Yeah. Storm deck like Yidris Storm.
Yidris, Melek, Mizzix. What's the other one? Those are the ones that come to mind. If you have this on board, it's going to get out of hand fast.
Yeah.
I can just imagine, though, when players see this, because I could see the value in it, and other players will as well. So they see this at the board. They know it's a combo piece to help you close out the game. they're just gonna destroy it. It's an enchantment, you know.
Right. For me, I think like you really want to have a plan if you're using this. I wouldn't just like willy-nilly try to throw this into a deck randomly.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely have to fall into a certain theme, and then I think if you're gonna cast it, you should expect to win.
Yeah, exactly. Next up is Geomancers Gambit. Is 2 and a red for a sorcery. Destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library, draw a card.
This one for me, I'm huge into land destruction that doesn't offend anyone, you know. Like get Ghost Quarter, for example. This reminds me, you know, very much of Ghost Quarter, in that, you know, you're giving your opponent something back in exchange for destroying their Gaia's Cradle or their Cabal coffers. You get to cycle it, essentially. 3 mana, draw a card.
Yep.
Not terrible. For me, lands have become one of a big like button topic, where when they introduced flip lands in particular, I think a lot of people started playing all those cards that flip over and become something better, and not many people have that much, you know, land interaction, you know, like
Right.
grave interaction. It's something that people, you know, they kind of skimp on to maintain their strategy.
Right. And yeah, like you said, lands have become very strong, maybe even a little too good. I've played some very janky decks on my channel that were basically just like do anything and ramp. Like the one that comes to mind is when I played the one that was all man lands and board wipes. Like you shouldn't win a game with man lands. That's not a thing that should happen in Commander, but that's just how strong playing a lot of lands is,
Yeah.
and having board wipes to back them up. So totally agree that people need to run more interaction for lands. This one I'm not in love with as much. I don't really have a qualm with blowing up a land, especially if it's if it's a Gaia's Cradle, if it's a Cabal Coffers, something, one of those nasty utility lands or one of those lands that produces lots of mana, and not giving them anything back in return. But if you're trying to keep your hand full, that is something to think about as well.
Yeah. The redraw is always good.
Yeah, the redraw is very cool. And again, this one also pairs beautifully with Aven Mind Sensors. So another reason to run Aven Mind Sensor.
Yeah, it's just a good magic card. You mentioned stopping your opponents from doing things. We're now in blue. That's the next color.
You shall do nothing
You shall
is
do nothing. Yeah.
is blue. That is blue.
Force of Negation. So one of the first cards spoiled with this set, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's a combination of 2 cards, 2 blue and a colorless. Force of Negation is an instant. If it's not your turn, that's very important. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand. Rather than paying this spell's mana cost, counter target non-creature spell. If its spells counter this way, exile it instead of putting it in the owner's graveyard. So it's Force of Negation.
We got
I mean,
Force of Will, baby.
yeah, Force of Will. If it's Force of Will meets like Pact of Negation meets Negate, you know, just kind of has a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Free counter spells are good. Like that's just the end of the story. A free counter spell is always good. In Commander specifically, so this card does say counter target non-creature spell. Most of the time, the scariest things happening are the non-creatures. You know, the creatures are the kind of the thing that close out the game, but it's all the non-creature stuff that usually sets them up. So when you're able to counter a non-creature spell, I'm thinking that big sorcery late in the game,
Yeah.
Tooth and Nail, Exsanguinate, I guess an Omniscience, stuff like that. Those are the things you want to be countering. This allows you to tap out on your turn and still hold up the counter for that stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Anytime you're even playing a creature strategy, you want to tap out so that you can attack with your creatures, and you leave this as a resource to save your creatures, because most board wipes as well are non-creature spells. You know,
Right.
unless you run into Supreme Verdict, you're gonna
Right.
be able to counter it.
Yeah, it's huge. Being able to counter non-creature spells for free is very, very good. Have you ever played against anyone that like runs all of the free counter spells?
I mean, I play a lot of them. So, I mean, I don't play any. I'm not really one to play Force of Will, but like Pact of Negation and anything that's free, anything that's, you know, undercosted, it's for me, you know.
There's a group that I play with where they pretty much run all of them, and it's a different kind of game because tapping out doesn't really mean anything. It's just like it's such a different thing. When you see a blue player tap out, you're like, yes, this is my chance. No, not against these guys. Like just because they're tapped out, no, they probably still have counters in hand that, Pact of Negation, Force of Will. You start thinking about which one they have. Do they have the mana for Pact of Negation? Now they've got another one that they can be running on that list. So
Well, yeah, that's the idea of, say, competitive EDH, where people play free counter spells. They play, single mana counter spells that interact very well with one another, and like so that they can get their combos off. You
right,
know.
and like you have to, otherwise you'll just lose if you don't. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I think the CDH crowd is really gonna like this one.
Is there anything else that we can think of from Blue that the CEDH crowd might like, or that we might like? How about Urza, Lord High Artificer? New
Yeah,
legend?
new legend. 2 blue for a 1/4. Enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Then it says tap an untapped artifact you control, add a blue. Pay 5, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
So
stuff on this card.
there's a lot going on here, which is great. It creates a body,
That it does.
that gets more powerful with the more artifacts you control. I like where Blue's been going lately in terms of artifacts and building up towards artifacts. I want to see more of that from this color.
They do have some stuff. They got like Psy Master Thopterist not that long ago. There were a few from back in the day too. Is like Arkham Dassum and I think there's one more. Oh, Padim. Padim was somewhat recent.
Yeah, Padim.
Blue artifact synergies, very good. Have you thought about the combo potential in this one yet?
So I've thought about it, and this is one thing that I'd like to mention about our play group when we play on the channels. We kind of avoid combos. We kind of stick to more like convoluted combos, so things that take a little bit more than, say, your standard 2-card combo.
Right.
And so for me, when I'm building a deck for the channel, I try to not include cards that are just going to win on their own.
Right.
And when you have something like this in the command zone, it's going to be really difficult to build because there's just so much potential for it to go infinite with the blue mana,
Yeah.
and just play every card from your deck thanks to its last ability.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too is that it makes colored mana. Most of the like easier infinite mana combos do not produce colored mana. This one does.
Yeah.
That is a distinguishing point for me. I would assume that we're still probably talking about like a Lab Maniac win or something like that. But if you're getting like every artifact out of your deck and putting them all into play and generating infinite mana, then there's any number of ways you can win the game from.
Definitely.
Yeah, this thing looks pretty ridiculous. I'm sure I'll be seeing it in the more competitive group that I play. It'll probably be awful. I'll probably just be sitting there for like 20 minutes watching a turn go off. Better pack to force of negation.
Yeah, exactly. So talk about players winning the game with that. I want to mention the losing the game part that's particularly mentioned on the card. Mirrodin Besieged, a blue and 2 colorless for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose Mirian or Phyrexian. Mirian, whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. Phyrexian, at the beginning of your end step, draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 15 or more artifact cards in your graveyard, target opponent loses the game.
What's up?
Take out a player, casually.
Yeah. So alternate win conditions are always fun. 15 artifacts is a lot. Like that's a number of cards to get in your graveyard. You could self-mill. I don't think it's like necessarily hard to get to that place.
No, not really.
No, like yeah, especially if you're running like a lot of the 0 and 1 mana stuff, just things that cycle and whatever else. But yeah, alternate win conditions always a good time. I think this card's really interesting.
Yeah, enchantments in particular that interact with artifacts, I always find it in a weird place, but in a positive way. It's like, the first ability, casting artifact spells and creating bodies, it fits perfectly into an Urza deck. It fits into any type of deck where you want to go wide with token creatures.
Yeah. Now, one thing, I think it might be a little bit too strong on the Phyrexian side, just because it's at the beginning of your end step instead of a lot of cards with these alternate win conditions usually have to like play them and then untap with them. This happens at the end step, which is a bit scary. Makes me want to start packing more Tormod's Crypts in my decks.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Graveyard Hate is one of the things that as commander players really don't include enough of, and I'm also guilty of this.
Oh, I'm so guilty of this.
But it's like you at least, at the very minimum, need a singular card in your deck, no matter what you're playing.
I've been trying to run Scavenger Grounds in all of my decks because it's a land, like you don't really have to eat up that deck slot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a good one. But holding the mana up for it, especially like earlier in the game, can be kind of a thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do have some concerns about the fact that that's on the end step, which does make it inherently more powerful,
Yeah,
but
it's
also a
like if
little bit scary at the same time.
you tap out, that's it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Anyone have any graveyard removal? Cool, good game.
How should we tackle this one?
Very
It's
carefully.
Yeah, snow is something that they introduced with reintroduced with
Cold
Modern
snap.
Horizons. Well, I was
Oh yeah.
thinking specifically like we're back with snow, you know.
Yes, snow is back.
And this one in particular works very well with snow. It's Merit Leisure's Slumber, a blue and a colorless for a legendary snow enchantment. When Merit Liege Slumber or another snow permanent enters the battlefield and includes lands, scry 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more snow permanents, sacrifice it and create Merit Liege, a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I was gonna ask you, what's your experience with Merit Liege?
Have I lost to Dark Depths Vampire Hexmage before? Yes, that's a thing that I've lost to before. This one seems a bit more adjusted for balance.
Yes. Mono blue in particular has a hard time closing out the game. So the fact that it's blue, I think if you're including just basics, you should probably go snow. Like you get to scry 1 every time you play a land. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is a very good ability.
And I mean, blue's all about seeing as many cards as possible and drawing as many cards as possible. So
Right.
that
And some of
alone.
the stronger blue decks that I've seen, as you start getting more towards that competitive crowd of blue decks, a lot of them will run Snowlands because they do like extra planar lens.
Yeah.
And that keeps other people from getting the help off of extra planar lens. And I've kind of found that like a lot of blue decks, their win condition just tends to be making a lot of mana. Like you just make a lot of mana and do something. And sometimes it's Palinchron, sometimes it's a Cage Sun or a High Tide or things like that. But just making lots of lands in blue, really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I think 10's not a lot. I mean, what Ascend from the City's Blessing, you get that pretty easily in Commander. So how is
Yeah.
Merit Leisure's Slumber any different?
Right. Things that'll probably gain value here, things like a Solemn Simulacrum, Burnished Heart, all good cards anyway. Things that help you put extra lands into play.
Yeah.
Will speed this process up. Yeah, I mean, it's not unreasonable to think that you could be looking at a Merit Lage token like turn 6, turn 7, turn 8 if things go well.
Yeah, an indestructible flyer, unless you're drawing that path or swords, it's gonna be tough to deal with.
Yeah. The fact that it's 2 mana also means that like you can just kind of like sneak it down late in the game. Like it's not this big expensive play that takes up your entire turn.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you have to wait till your next upkeep, sure, but once it's down, it's a threat, you know?
Exactly.
Everyone stop what they're doing and destroy this
Yeah,
enchantment.
get rid of this enchantment, otherwise you can have a bad time.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, just what we needed, more Merit Lage.
Okay, this next one, it's value. There's a couple here that are pure value, and this is an addition to a particular cycle. It's Tribute Mage, a 2 and a blue. Human Wizard, when Tribute Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 2. Reveal that card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. So this is you got Trinket Mage, you got Trophy Mage, now you got
Treasure
Tribute
Mage?
Mage.
Don't
Treasure
forget
Mage.
Treasure Mage. I think that's
Yeah.
was that 6 and above, or is it just 6?
Six.
Just 6. So searching for a 2 mana artifact. Which artifact you searching for?
Ooh, good question. I haven't looked too much into this card yet. I see a lot of people grabbing like combo pieces with this. I think anytime you can grab something specific, there's a way to break it.
Yeah, for me, the things just at the top of my head are going to be a Signet if you're in multicolor, Thought Vessel if you're monocolor and you got a big card draw spell in hand. Scroll Rack is very good for just a lot of things. So those are some pretty good ones. With all the other mages, even if you get something that's like fine, you're still just getting free value.
Okay, this is one of the ones in particular that I wanted to talk about in terms of like pure value. Watcher for Tomorrow, a colorless and a blue for a creature with Hideaway. So it enters the battlefield tapped. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. When it leaves the battlefield, put that exile card into your hand. So while it's not as explosive as some of the other hideaway lands that come to mind, you know, like your Mosswart Bridge, it's more than card draw. You're looking at the top four. It's like an anticipate,
Yeah,
you know.
that is very good.
Uh,
Especially, I'm thinking about, so this is a leaves the battlefield. So you start blinking this thing, you just
mhm,
sacrifice, you throw a skull clamp on it, whatever the case is. You're
yeah.
going to be getting some extra cards. And yeah, there is a lot of value in looking at 4 cards as opposed to just like drawing the top 1 or the top 2 cards.
We're gonna see this appear in blue decks for sure.
And what's also crazy about it too is like if you're a blue player, you probably already have ways to look at the top of your deck. Like you're probably already running a dividing top. You may have brainstormed. So if you know what's there and you don't like any of it, it's a good way to get through like a pocket of lands or something like that.
Yes.
So, I think we like even with the commander deck that came out last year, manipulating the top of your library is very powerful.
Another deck that comes to mind for me is Anala. So it's a wizard, you know, cost reduction, pay an extra mana to make a copy of it, and then that one just immediately leaves the battlefield.
Yep.
I love creatures with value because they can also act as a blocker. And when you're playing a strategy such as like your mono blue decks, you need blockers because you're mostly playing spells from your hand and gaining value that way.
Yeah, and I found that like a lot of times I won't attack a player that just has like a random chump blocker if I don't have trample or some sort of evasion. A 2/1 sometimes is big enough to just deter an attack, plus the fact that you're getting a card out of it. I'm not going to want to attack that player even more if they're going to get a card out of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, think of Solemn Simulacrum. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the biggest like deterrents for me when I'm playing. I'm like, well, I don't want to give him a card. It's
Right.
like, well, someone's gonna give him a card eventually, you
Right.
know?
And then it's turn 10 and then they're still at 40 is what
Yeah,
happens.
exactly. Okay.
So next up, we're into some green. Force of Vigor is 2 green green. It's an instant. It says if it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. And it says destroy up to 2 artifacts and/or enchantments. This is the card that I wanted to be white. I wanted this to be white so bad.
White already has this though. Not this
It-
exactly, but it
uh,
has this ability.
they don't have a free one that's that easy to cast. I've looked at Abolish a couple times, but ultimately never end up running it. This is just straight better than Abolish. I really wanted this thing to be white so badly.
Well, I don't mind it that it's green. I think like green has really good artifact and enchantment removal as well. Both of these colors do. What I like in particular is that this card also is just really good to cast for 4 mana.
Yeah.
It's a 2 for 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's almost Return to Dust, minus some of the weirder text on there and minus the exile, but similar sort of idea.
Yeah, exactly. So whether you're casting it for free, it helps in a pinch or, you know, just value.
Yeah, and there's always going to be 2 targets to blow up. I am never sad to see a Return to Dust when I play, and this is going to be just about the same thing. Where that free part comes in, so like again, I've been playing some more competitive decks on Thursday nights, and when people like to slam their Paradox engine and just go off, this gives you an answer to that, even if you're tapped out, which is really nice.
Yeah, so I can see it as a mono green staple. It's free.
Yeah, and I would actually say that like a lot of the green decks that I see are pretty light on removal. They sort of overcome that either by ending the game somewhat quickly or by like drawing half their deck and finding the 1 or 2 copies of like a Bane of Progress or something else. But I think I really want to see a lot of green decks with Cross and Grip, with Beast Within, and now adding Force of Vigor in there.
Yeah, just any way to interact with your opponent's artifacts or enchantments as quickly and efficiently as possible because it's all about interaction.
Yeah,
It's a huge part of the game. People go light on removal when it comes to artifacts and enchantments in particular.
that they do. And the next card is along that same theme. It's called Collector Oath. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2. It says activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. So we got a green hate bear, essentially.
Yep, we got a green hate bear. I like it. I like this more than one of the other cards that I've seen in the past. It's the 2 mana white creature. It's a legendary creature as well.
Tell
Let's
me
see if I
more.
can. Kataki War's Wage. All
Oh,
artifacts have at the beginning of your upkeep sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 1.
yes.
So I've played that in my Hate Bear Styles deck because you do not need artifacts as much. Like you just play a bunch of creatures, you play, some free instant spells. And I like what they're doing with this. Now, Derevi is the commander right now that you play as a Hate Bear commander, and it's
Yep.
just it's overall good legend,
Right.
But I would like them to print another one, like give us more options because people see Derevi hit the table and everyone's like groaning.
Yeah, it's got a real bad rap. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a long and terrible game.
We are leaning very heavily into 3-color Hate Bears with Bant, with Lavinia coming out as well, and
Yeah.
Deputy of Detention. It's good to see more green. We can just keep shoving Hate Bears into those colors because that's a good strategy. I didn't really start playing it as much until recently, and it's kind of like I want to stop my opponents. I don't want to stop myself, and
Right.
that's what this can do.
And you brought up a great point too, is that green decks don't usually need to run very many artifacts because they have such good mana ramp.
Yeah.
Uh, the artifact count in a green deck is significantly lower than
Mhm.
the artifact count in a white deck, a red deck, a Boros deck, or even like if you're looking at something like Grixis and Esper have to rely pretty heavily on artifacts to get the ramp going as well. And this shuts off all of that. Again, I see this in, for some stronger metas when you need to shut down some high power combo decks that are relying heavily on those early game mana rocks. This is going to help turn those off, and if you're the green deck, it's going to give you a better chance of not getting comboed out on turn
Yeah.
3.
So this is a Hate Bear. Can we talk bears? Is that where we go from here?
I should have brought my bear jokes. I forgot the bear jokes.
I don't have bear jokes. That's the best one I got, It's a new legend, Bear Tribal. How do you pronounce this?
I'm going to go with Ayula.
Ayula. That's better than what I was gonna say. Ayula Queen among Bears. 2 mana, legendary bear. Whenever another bear enters the battlefield under your control, either give it 2+1/+1 counters, or target bear you control fights target creature you don't control.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
So
Perfect bear commander.
I have some experience with the last tribal commander that they introduced, which was Tolsimer,
Okay.
friend to wolves.
Yep.
And there aren't that many wolves, for the deck. And so you do what you can to get the wolves, and you do what you can to make them valuable. I feel like this commander is going to be in a similar fashion because a lot of the bears, they're tutus, they just come in and they're there.
Right. A lot of them
So
don't do very much on their own. Like they're not super impactful, especially in Commander.
but you know what? Somebody's gonna make it work. I'm gonna maybe try my hand at this as well. But when they do, it's gonna be so glorious to see a board full of bears that got rid of all your creatures for some reason. They have so many +1/+1 counters. You know.
Yeah. I just did a quick search. There are 23 bear creatures. I didn't look through the colors or other things. You could probably get a couple more in there if you had some changelings and things.
Yeah, changeling shapeshifters. You just gotta.
I actually thought that there were more bears than that. I thought they had printed more over the years, but apparently not. So 23 is like, that can be a little bit tough if you're trying to round out your commander deck.
Yeah.
So definitely, and we'll get to the changelings in a bit, but you're definitely gonna want some changeling help, I think, if you're trying to go the bear tribal route. But as a bear tribal commander, I love it. It pumps up your bears, essentially turns your bears into removal if they're big enough. So that's really cool as well. We had Goreclaw out of we got that last year, and like
Yeah.
really cool card, but not the bear commander that everyone wanted. Like it was actively bad with bears.
Yeah, it was good with more, high converter mana cost creatures and trampling and
Right. I built a
doing.
worm tribal deck with it that's like very reasonable. But yeah, Ayula is like that's the bear commander. To me, it looks great. It comes down early, it helps the rest of your team, and like I said, it's removal on a stick, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be fun. That's what I love about Commander. Is I just want to have a good time. And this seems like right in the realm of like wacky tribal deck, you know.
Yeah, and then there's gonna be the day where you realize like someone figures out how to really play that deck, and you're like, oh, I just got crushed by bears.
Go home, tell your family,
Yeah, yeah. Just hang your head, put your cards away, never look at them again.
uh, yeah.
So next up on our list is Llanowar Tribe. This one's interesting. It's triple green for a 3/3, and you tap it to add triple green. It's like a green Thran Dynamo almost, and Thran Dynamo is a really good card, except this is also colored. It seems really, really good.
Yeah, well, it's an elf, so it's automatically going to be a staple in any elf tribal deck,
Yep.
where people can take advantage of that tapping for mana ability. Comes out turn 3, and like you said, Thran Dynamo, that's a lot of mana.
Yeah,
You're
that
going
is.
from 3 to 7.
Yeah, 7 if you make your next land drop. Yeah, that's huge. So, I mean, you're potentially talking about a turn 4 Avenger of Zendikar, turn 3 if you play a Mana Dork on 1.
Yeah, which I mean, if you're playing elf tribal, you are likely to play
Yeah.
a mana dork.
Yeah, I get that it's a little bit fragile just because it's the body of a creature, but, so is the rest of an Elf Ball deck. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a lot of mana to be adding. It's colored mana, which is even better. Yes, elf decks are going to want this, but I think also just like green good stuff decks, ramp decks, really anything that's trying to make green mana get to big creatures, you're going to want this thing.
definitely, definitely. Okay, well,
Next in the Force cycle, we have Force of Despair is 1 black black for an instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a black card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Destroy all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn. This is a really good ability, and where I see this being a big deal is against green decks. When you see someone going for that tooth and nail or going for that whatever means they're getting to Avenger of Zendikar, Craterhoof Behemoth, a lot of times that tends to happen all at once. And this gives you the ability to get rid of that. It's going to help stop some really big Alpha Strike play where someone coughed out a bunch of creatures and gives them all haste. The other day, I ended up losing to a Primal Surge deck. This is exactly the type of card that you want against a Primal Surge deck.
I think another example is like when people play something like Living Death or Thrill the Encore, where they reanimate, or Rise of the Dark Realms,
Yep. Yep.
mass reanimation. The card says if it's not your turn, there's like a pretty good chance you're only going to cast this when it's not your turn.
Right.
But you get the exile, so you get to cast it for free when your shield's down and prevent an opponent from winning the game. I think that's what's very important with this one.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I think about a lot of those strategies, a lot of them are opponent had like a couple things out, wasn't a big deal, and then they just like put everything in play. It's got haste. Here it comes. Nope, not today.
Yeah. Try again
Uh,
next turn.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to be really cool for stopping some big green decks. For a long time, I haven't liked cards like Tooth and Nail. Like I think Tooth and Nail is a little bit too good, and this is a very nice answer to that style of play. And I mean, this one's pretty easy to leave up at 3 mana, even if you just want to hard cast it.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of too good, Yawgmoth, Thran, Physician. Do you think it's too good?
I haven't even thought about it that much, but I've seen people talking about all the things that it does. Yeah, it's probably too good.
Well, there's a big combo potential with Undying. Let me read this one out for you. It's 4 mana, 2 black, 2 colorless, legendary creature, protection from humans, pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 creature, and draw a card. Then you may pay double black to discard a card and proliferate. So the big combo potential is with Undying. You put the +1/+1 counter on the Undying creature. After it's got the +1/+1 counter, you put the -1/-1 counter on it, and then you sacrifice it. It comes back with Undying, and you repeat the process, continually putting negative and +1/+1 counters until you can draw, well, as many cards as you want, really. I mean, the life total is 40, so
Banworthy?
I don't know about that. It
It doesn't
reminds
seem like it
me,
takes much.
for me, it reminds me very much of the Razaketh style deck, where you're playing black to gain value from your creatures and sacrificing like, half your board to just go grab your combo pieces. So it's a little bit more tame in that it can draw you, your entire deck. But an opponent playing any kind of damage, like if they do it right, they can hopefully, punish you with even like a blood artist sacrifice or some
Yeah,
sort of burn.
that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about like Blood Artist and the minimum number of things you need to just loop them infinitely until everyone's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
That seems really good to me, and it seems really easy to assemble and very cheap mana-wise, which has me a bit concerned.
Yeah, I'm looking to build this one myself, and like I mentioned with Urza, avoiding a lot of the combos, hoping to just take advantage of some sacrifice your creatures, draw cards. That's what I want to do with this one for me. So I don't know how well it'll be able to reputation of being a combo commander, but hopefully, when you sit down at a table, you can still have some fun with this one.
Historically, when a commander is really powerful, people tend to just gravitate toward the most powerful build of it, at least for like, when it first comes out, that first 6 months or so. Get ready to see a lot of this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Run your graveyard removal, rest in peace, stuff like that. Anyway, with that, let's wrap it up here. Austin, thanks for coming on the show. Where can people find you?
So Commander99 on YouTube. We'll include a link in the description, right?
Yeah, let's do that. We're professionals here.
Yeah, exactly. You'll just find us on YouTube. We're also on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page as well. So just typing in, CMDR99 spelled out. That'll help you find the channel and find our content.
Cool. Well, thank you for stopping by. Be sure to check out Commander99, or be sure to check out Commander Replay, depending on which channel you're viewing currently.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
So that's going to complete the first half of this video. If you want to check out the second half, where we talk about more cards from Modern Horizons, be sure to check that out on Austin's channel at Commander99. A link will be in the description below.